All right, I think we've covered quite a bit. You have so many connections. Your phone book, you must be able to like reach the moon with your phone book. You have thick phone book, I bet.
The Over the years, yeah, I've gotten so many contacts, obviously working with so many different people. Um, Early on, I would speak to Bobby Rydell all the time when I first got to know him, and we'd talk for hours sometimes on the phone about upcoming events. And he's an agent, and that's how I met him. I must have got his number through somebody else. And every once in a while, he'd give me, somebody's number, and I'd book him for a gig or whatever. I booked Missy Hyatt through him for she was one of my HWF shows. She was special guest ring announcer for the main event, and she did autographs during intermission, that type of thing. But yeah, my phone book back then, like some of the craziest things were different back then. WWF was still, even though it had entered the Attitude Era, as a company, it wasn't public yet, and it was still a mom and pop company. It's hard to explain. Like even Stone Cold on top in 1998, the happenings and the way the company was run behind the scenes, it was still a mom and pop organization where you could email Vince McMahon if you wanted to email Vince McMahon. Now, most people didn't have that contact, but you can't just email Vince McMahon now. It doesn't work like that. Or you could call. I had the phone number for the Hart House, and I would call the Hart House, not knowing really what I wanted to even talk about. I called the Hart House. I'm sorry, Helen answered the phone one time. She puts me on with Stu, and he's like, "Yeah, hello." And I explained like the whole situation. I've got a talk show. I was a young kid, but I'm like, I got a talk show. Would love to do some interviews or something with you guys. And I didn't really know what to say, but I knew that I wanted to do something with them. And Stu Hart was so gracious. We ended up talking a few times over the years, and you never knew who was going to answer the phone at the Hart House. I talked to Stu multiple times. I talked to Helen. I talked to Georgia, the sister. I talked to Bruce. I talked to Keith. I talked to one of the other sisters, and it was an awesome experience. Just you felt like they made you feel like you were a part of the family. And I was actually invited to go to the Hart House and do interviews with the family for my talk show. And I was so young, though, I just didn't even have the means to act upon it. I wasn't allowed to at 15, 16 to go to Canada, just interview. It wasn't a thing. So it was me inquiring about it and them saying, let's do it. And then unfortunately, I just couldn't do anything about it, but still had some great conversations with them. And many years later, got to appear on Bruce Hart's podcast, talked about Hall of Fame and Pump Up My Fan Fest and stuff like that. So, but the Hart family are very generous people, very down to earth people. Diana Hart, she's worked for me. Jim Neidhart's worked for me. Harry Smith has worked for me. All great people, super down to earth. So had some really cool experiences with them. But another funny phone number that was in my phone book back then when I was, 16, 17 was Vince McMahon. Now, how on earth can you call Vince McMahon? That's not a possibility, especially today. But back then, it was so mom and pop. A couple of the guys in the business had Vince McMahon's contact, and they had got it from somebody else, and that person got it from, but nobody was actually calling Vince. They just said, "Oh, this is Vince McMahon's number if you want it." Nobody knew what to do with it. Like, oh, okay. Well, I called Vince McMahon. So I called Vince on a Sunday, which I was so young, I didn't know the proper protocol for certain things. Obviously over the years you find out, well, you don't talk wrestling on Sundays. Sundays are for, rest. You don't, Sunday was the day that you just you didn't talk business. So I called Vince. Linda McMahon answered. And you would think it would end right there. But no, she puts me through to Vince. And I didn't even know if this was real. You know, they just gave me this number. I'm like, well, that definitely was Linda McMahon. So she puts me through to Vince. And goes, hello. And I'm like, wow. You know, what do I even say as a 16-year-old kid? I got Vince McMahon on the phone. This is my shot, right? I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing. Just wanted to really call to see if it was even a real number. And I remember explaining something to Vince, like, you know, I've got this talk show and, you know, would love to do an interview with you or something. I don't even remember how I worded it now. And Vince said, well, Joe, it's Sunday, Joe. He's like, so call me at the office. Call me at the office. It's a Sunday right now. I was like, no problem at all, you know, but just to even have that experience was just so bizarre, you know, so crazy. But there's been a lot of fun things throughout the years in the wrestling that the wrestling business has given me, that's for sure. And it's so minuscule for me, you know, I'm way down here. I never, you know, did anything, you know, I didn't ring announced on the big screen or anything like that, but still so many experiences that I would never trade away, you know, seeing all kinds of different things. And I did get to work for the WWF as an extra just for one night. And it was 2002, February, for Monday Night Raw at the Providence Civic Center. And they needed 20 extras for a bar brawl at Tim White's Friendly Tap. And I was actually waiting as a fan, just waiting in the back of the, my buddy Jay said, hey, you want to go to the Providence Civic Center? WWF's coming. You want to go wait in the back, see if some of the guys are, you know, pulling up. And because I was still young at this time, and I said, sure. So I'm waiting there with my buddy Jay. We're kind of seeing the cars pull in. Oh, is that so-and-so? You know. And then I turn, and the entire Chaotic Wrestling roster is standing maybe 100 feet away from me with Randy Miller, the owner, kind of like talking to them and directing them. And I, you know, at this time I had recently, maybe a year before that, you know, did that one gig with Chaotic and have been to many Chaotic shows backstage with, whether I went with the ring crew or whoever it may be. And so I walked up to them. I was like, Jay, I'll be right back. I go walk up to them. I see Randy Miller, and I'm kind of in the middle of it. And Randy's like, all right, there's supposed to be 20 of us as extras. We've only got 19 because he's going to stay back. And honestly, I think the person who stayed back was Damian Sandow, who at that time was Aaron the Idol Stevens for Chaotic Wrestling. And so, you know, it was now 19 extras because that Damian Sandow was going to stay back to work a dark match at the arena. So they were short one extra. So Randy Miller looks at me, Joe, you want to do the skit with us? And I didn't even know what it was. And I'm sure, absolutely. I mean, when does that opportunity come up? So he slaps the backstage pass, all access pass, or whatever it was on my chest. I kind of left my buddy Jay hanging. I told him, I was like, Jay, I'm sorry, but I got to go in. I got to see what this is about. You know what I mean? So shortly after that, Jay's like, oh, I completely understand. So we all walked backstage, and we're all treated like royalty, like, you know, like we're just part of the show. And they say, help yourself to the buffet. We're eating backstage all day at the buffet. And you see Vince McMahon sitting there with all the referees and Michael Cole. They were all eating together. You had Stone Cold and Deborah eating together at a table. You had Benoit, Jericho, and the Hardys eating together. Then you kind of had the older guys together. It was like Boss Man and Kurt Hennig and Kevin Nash and X-Pac, you know, all eating together. So we sit down, we're eating the buffet. Table right next to me is Short Sleeve Samson, The Undertaker, The Godfather, Kane, and Albert at the table right next to us. And then the 2 or 3 tables that we have are all the Chaotic boys. And we ended up going to the Friendly Tap after that. We filmed a portion of it earlier in the day, and then we filmed the second portion of it live on Raw. And they were able to edit it together so it all looked like one piece. Bruce Pritchard, Brother Love, was the one running the skit. It was Men's Night Out. That was the name of the event at the Friendly Tap. And it ended up being a big brawl between the APA, Farouk and Bradshaw, and Billy and Chuck Palumbo and Billy Gunn. and we had, 5 of us had to wear dresses, and the rest of us just, regular clothing. But they're like, all right, 5 of you are going to be wearing dresses. And I'm like, oh man, I hope that's not me. So I'm kind of laying low as they're, picking out those people, and they picked all 5, and it wasn't me. All right, good. Don't have to wear a dress. And then all of a sudden, one of the guys that was doing the skit had a better idea for himself without the dress. And he wanted to do this like funny thing where he like unbuttons the shirt down and just kind of, played along with it. And so Randy Miller turns to me and says, well, Joe, how about you taking one for the team since you were the last one added today? Why don't you wear the dress? I'm like, man, okay, all right, I'm in, whatever it takes. So I wear the dress. Todd Fat Pants Sinclair, who's now senior official for Ring of Honor, he's wearing a dress next to me. We got our wigs. It was hilarious. Looking back on it, it was so much fun. We had a lot of fun. One Night Stand were there. Edward G. Ecstasy, Ronnie Delicious, Randy Miller was in the skit, Arch Kincaid, Rich Palladino, Anthony Rufo, just a whole host of, chaotic roster. And it was definitely a good memory to look back on. Dave Hebner ended up paying us back at the arena after the skit. He was in charge of, paying all the boys. We got paid back then in cash, which now that would never happen. We got paid $250 cash, to experience that. I would have done that for nothing, obviously, but on top of that, you get paid. And I remember back then it wasn't digital yet, so it was still being put onto VHS. And when they filmed live, they had to edit that tape because we did part of it earlier in the day. So that VHS tape had a police escort from the Friendly Tap back to the Providence Civic Center so they could do like editing and stuff. So I'll never forget that. A VHS tape gets a police escort, because they had to rush it there. But great experience. It was an awesome experience.
Yeah, that sounds like it. I remember that skit with the APA tearing up the bar.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, I think we're kind of winding it down unless there's anything you can think of that we've missed.
I think that's everything. I think we covered all of it, or maybe biggest regret.
Yeah, that's what I was going to wrap it up with. I just mean any stories or anything that we really missed.
That's everything.
All right.